For those who are new, welcome. For those who are returning, welcome. I'm back to read the last 3 chapters of The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis. And it's going to be, 13, 14, and 15. So we're going to be finishing the book now. So let's get started. The fight at Anford. By about 11 o'clock, the whole company was once more on the march, riding westward with the mountains on their left. Corin and Jasta rode right at the rear with the giants immediately in front of them. Lucy and Edmund and Paradin were busy with their plans for the battle, and though Lucy once said, "But where is his goose-cap, Highness?" Edmund only replied, "Not in front, and that's good news enough. Leave well alone." Jessa told Corin most of his adventures and explained that he had learned all his riding from a horse and didn't really know how to use the reins. Corin instructed him in this, besides telling him all about their secret sailing from Dashban. "And where is the Queen, Susan?" "At Cair Paravel," said Corin. "She's not like Lucy, you know, who else as good as a man, or at any rate as good as a boy. Queen Susan is more like an ordinary grown-up lady. She doesn't ride to the wars, though she is an excellent archer." The hillside path, which they were following, became narrower all the time, and the drop on their right hand became steeper. At last, they were going in single file along the edge of the precipice, and Chasta shuddered to think that he had done the same last night without knowing it. "But of course," he thought, "I was quite safe. That is why the lion kept on my left. He was between me and the edge at all times. All the time. Then the path went left and south away from the cliff, and there were thick woods on both sides of it, and they went steeply up and up into the pass. There would have been a splendid view from the top of it, were open ground, but among all those trees you could see nothing, only every now and then some huge pinnacle of rock above the treetop, and an eagle or two wheeling high up in the blue air. "They smell battle," said Corin, pointing at the birds. "They know we're preparing a feed for them." Jessa didn't like this at all. When they had crossed the neck of the pass and come a good deal lower, they reached more open ground, and from here Chasta could see all Arkenland, blue and hazy, spread out below him, and even, he thought, a hint of desert beyond it. But the sun, which had perhaps 2 hours or so to go before it set, was in his eyes, and he couldn't make things out distinctly. Here an army halted and spread out in a line, and there was a great deal of rearranging. A whole detachment of every dangerous-looking talking beast from Chasta had not noticed before, and who were mostly of the cat kind. Leopards, panthers, and the like went padding and growling to take up their position on the left. The giants were ordered to the right, and before going there, they all took off something they had been carrying on their backs and sat down for a moment. Then Jasta saw that what they had been carrying on were now putting on were pairs of boots, horrid heavy spiked boots, which came sound of many men shouting and steadily thud, thud, thud. Battering ram, whispered Corin. They're battering the gate. Even Corin looked quite serious now. Why doesn't King Eggman get on? He said. I can't stand this waiting about. Chili too. Justin nodded, hoping he didn't look as frightened as he felt. The trumpet at last. On the move now trotting, the banner streaming out in the wind. They had topped a low ridge. Now and below them, the whole scene suddenly opened out. A little, many towered castles with its gates towards them. No moat, unfortunately, but of course the gates shut at the portcullis. Down on the walls they could see, like little white dots, the faces of the defenders. Down below, about 50 of the Carmines, dismounted, were steadily swinging a great tree trunk against the gate. But at once the scene changed. The main bulk of Rabadash men had been on foot, ready to assault the gate. But now he had seen the Narnians sweeping down from the ridge. There is no doubt those Colormeans are wonderfully trained. It seemed to Jasta only a second before a whole line of enemy were on horseback again, wheeling around to meet them, swinging towards them. And now a gallop. The ground between the two armies grew less every moment. Faster, faster, all swords out now, all shields up to the nose, all prayers said, all teeth clenched. Jasta was dreadfully frightened, but it suddenly came into his head. If you funk this, you'll funk every battle all your life, now or never. But when at last the two lines met, he had really very little idea of what happened. There was a frightful confusion, an appalling noise. His sword was knocked clean out of his hand pretty soon, and he'd got the reins tangled somehow. Then he found himself slipping. Then a spear came straight at him, as he ducked to avoid it, he rolled right off his horse, bashed his left knuckles terribly against someone else's armor, and then... But it is no use trying to describe the battle from Chasta's point of view. He understood too little of the fight in general, and even of his own part in it. The best way I can tell you what really happened is to take you some miles away to where the hermit of the southern march sat gazing into the smooth pool beneath the spreading tree, with Bree and Win and Erebus beside him. For it was in this pool that the hermit looked when he wanted to know what was going on in the world outside the green walls of his hermitage. There, as in a mirror, he could see at certain times what was going on in the street of cities far further south than Tashbana, or what whips were putting into Red Haven in the remote Seven Isles, or what robbers or wild beasts stirred in the great western forest between Lantern, Waste, and Telmar. And all this he had hardly left his pool, even to eat or drink, for he knew that great events were afoot in Arkenland. Erebus and the course gazed into it too. They could see it was a magic pool. Instead of reflecting the tree and the sky, it revealed cloudy and colored shapes, always moving in its depth, but they could see nothing clearly. The hermit could, and from time to time he told them what he saw. A little while before Chasta rode into his first battle, the hermit had begun speaking like this. I see 1, 2, 3 eagles wheeling in the gap by Stormness head. One is the oldest of all the eagles. He could not be out unless battle was at hand. I see him wheel to and fro, peering down, sometimes at Rabadash is giving his orders now. With him are his most trusted lords, fierce Targans, Tormund and Azru, and Klamash and Ilgamoth of the Twisted Lip, and a tall Targan with a crimson beard. By the mane, my old master Anradin, said Bree. Shh, said Erebus. Now the ram has started. If I could hear as well as see what a noise that would make. Stroke after stroke, and no gate can stand it forever. But wait, something up by Stormness has scared the birds. They're coming out in masses. And wait again, I can't see yet. Ah, now I can. The whole ridge up on the east is black with horsemen. If only the wind would catch that standard and spread it out. They're over the ridge now, whoever they are. Ah, I've seen the banner now. Narnia, Narnia. It's the Red Lion. They're in full career down the hill now. I can see King Edmund. There's a woman behind among the archers. Oh, what is it? Asked Wynn breathlessly. All his cats are dashing out from the left of the line. Cats, said Erebus. Great cats, leopards and such, said the hermit impatiently. I see, I see. The cats are coming round in a circle to get the horses of the dismounted men. A good stroke. The Calormene horses are mad with terror already. Now the cats are in among them, but Rabadash has reformed his line and has 100 men in the saddle. They're riding to meet the Narnians. There's only 100 yards between the two lines. Now, only 50. I can see King Edmund. I can see the Lord Paradin. They are two mere children in the Narnian line. What can the king be about to let them into battle? Only 10 yards. The lines have met. The giants on the Narnian right are doing wonders, but one's down, shot through the eye, I suppose. The center all in a muddle. I can see more on the left. There are two boys again, lying alive. One is Prince Corin, the other, like him, as two peas. It's your little Shasta. Corin is fighting like a man. He's killed a Calormene. I can see a bit of the center now. Rabadash and Edmund almost met then, but the press has separated them. What about Shasta? Said Erebus. Oh, the fool, groaned the hermit. Poor brave little fool. He knows nothing about this work. He's making no use at all of his shield. His whole side's exposed. He hasn't the finest idea what to do with his sword. Oh, he's remembered it now. He's waving it widely about. Nearly cut his own pony's head off, and he will in a moment if he's not careful. It's been knocked out of his hand now. It's mere murder, sending a child into the battle. He can't live 5 minutes. Duck, you fool. Oh, he's down. Killed, asked the three voices breathlessly. How can I tell? Said the hermit. The cats have done their work. All the riderless horses are dead or escaped now. No retreat for the Calormenes on them. Now the cats are running back into the main battle. They're leaping on the ram's men. The ram is down. Oh, good, good. The gates are opening from the inside. They're going to be a sortie. The first 3 are out. It's King Loon in the middle, the brothers Dar and Darren on the each side of him. Behind them are Tran and Shar, and Cole with his brother Colin. There are 10, 20, nearly 30 of them out by now. The Calormene lines is being forced back upon them. King Edmund is dealing marvelous strokes. He's just slashed Coradin's head off. Lots of Calormenes have thrown down their arms and are running for the woods. Those that remain are hard pressed. The giants are closing in on the right dark hands down. Bree, Loon, and Ezru are fighting hand to hand. The king looks like winning. The king is keeping it up well. The king has won. As Ruth down. King Edmund's down. No, he's up again. He's at it with Rapidash. They're fighting it in the very gate of the castle. Several color means have surrendered. Darren has killed Ilgamuth. I can't see what happened to Rapidash. I think he's dead, leaning against the castle wall, but I don't know. Clamash and King Edmund are still fighting, but the battle is over everywhere else. Clamash has surrendered. The battle is over. The color means are utterly defeated. When Chesta fell off his horse, he gave himself up for lost. But horses, even in battle, tread on human beings very much less than you would suppose. After a very horrible 10 minutes or so, Chesta realized suddenly that there were no longer any horses stamping about in the immediate neighborhood, and that the noise, for there were still a good many noises going on, was no longer that of a battle. He sat up and stared about him. Even he, little as he knew of battles, could soon see that the Arkenlanders and Narnians had won. The only living color means he could see were prisoners. The castle gates were wide open. King Loon and King Edmund were shaking hands across the battering ram. From the circle of lords and warriors around them, there arose the sound of breathless and excited, but obviously cheerful conversation, and then suddenly all united and swelled into a great roar of laughter. Chasta picked himself up, feeling uncommonly stiff, and ran towards the sound to see what the joke was. A very curious sight met his eyes. The unfortunate Rapidash appeared to be suspended from the castle walls. His feet, which were about 2 feet from the ground, were kicking wildly. His chin shirt was somehow hitched up so that it was horribly tight under the arms and came halfway over his face. In fact, he looked just as a man looks if you catch him in the very act of getting into stiff shirt that is a little too small for him, as far as could be made out afterwards. And you may be sure the story was well talked over for many a day. What happened was something like this. Early in the battle, one of the giants had made an unsuccessful stamp at Rapidash with his spiked boot. Unsuccessful because it didn't crush Rapidash, which was what the giant had intended, but not quite unless because, or useless, because one of the spikes tore the chainmail, just as you or I might tear in an ordinary shirt. So Rapidash, by the time he encountered Edmund at the gate, had a hole in the back of his hauberk, and when Edmund pressed him back near and near to the wall, he jumped up on the mounting block and stood there, raining down blows of Edmund from above. But then, finding that his position by raising him above the heads of everyone else made him a mark for every arrow from the Narnian bows, he decided to jump down again, and he meant to look and sound, no doubt. For a moment he did look and sound very grand and very dreadful as he jumped, crying. The bolt of dash falls from above, but he had to jump sideways because the crowd in front of him left him no landing place in that direction. And then, in the neatest way you could wish, the tear in his back of his hauberk caught on a hook in the wall. Ages ago, this hook had a ring in it for tying horses to. Not so. The turning to Rabadashi said, Your Royal Highness, if you had given that challenge a week ago, I'll answer for it. There was no one in King Edmund's dominion, from the High King down to the smallest talking mouse, who would have refused it. But by attacking our castle on Anvar in time of peace without defiance sent, you have proved yourself no knight, but a traitor, and one rather to be whipped by a hangman than to be suffered to cross swords with any person of honor. Take him down, bind him, and carry him within till our pleasure is further known. Strong hands wrenched Rabadash's sword from him, and he was carried away into the castle, shouting, threatening, cursing, and even crying, for though he could have faced torture, he couldn't bear being made ridiculous. In Tashban, everyone had always taken him seriously. At that moment, Corin rang up to Chasta, seized his hand, and started dragging him towards King Loon. Where, here he is, father. Here he is, cried Corin. Aye, and here thou art, at last, said King in a very gruff voice, and has been in the battle, clean contrary to your obedience, a boy to break a father's heart. At your age, a rod to your breech were fitter than a sword in your fist. Ha! But everyone, including Corin, could see that the king was very proud of him. Chide him no more, sire, if it please you, said Lord Darren. His Highness would not be your son if he did not inherit your conditions. It would grieve your majesty more if he had to be reproved for the opposite fault. Well, well, grumbled the king. We'll pass it over for this time. And now, what came next surprised Chasta as much as anything that had ever happened to him in his life. He found himself suddenly embraced in a bear-like hug by King Loon and kissed on both cheeks. Then the king set him down against and said, Stand here together, boys, and let all the court see you. Hold up your heads. Now, gentlemen, look on them both. Has any man any doubts? And still Chasta could not understand why everyone stared at him and at Corin, nor what all the cheering was about. Okay, and that's the end for chapter 13. Now, chapter 14. How Bree became a wiser horse. We must now return to Erebus and the horses. The hermit, watching his bull, was able to tell them that Chasta was not killed or even seriously wounded, for he saw him get up and saw how affectionately he was greeted by King Loon. But as he could only see, not hear, he did not know what anyone was saying. And once the fighting had stopped and the talking had begun, it was not worthwhile looking in the pool any longer. Next morning, while the hermit was indoors, the three of them discussed what they should do next. I've had enough of this, said one. The hermit has been very good to us, and I am very much obliged to him, I'm sure, but I'm getting as fat as a pet pony, eating all day and getting no exercise. Let's go on to Narnia. Oh, not today, ma'am, said Bree. I wouldn't hurry things some other day, don't you think? We must see Chasta first and say goodbye to him and apologize to Erebus. Exactly, said Bree with great enthusiasm. Just what I was going to say. Oh, of course, said Wynne. I expect he is Anvard. Naturally, we'd look in on him and say goodbye. But that's on our way. And why shouldn't we start at once? After all, I thought it was Narnia we all wanted to get to. I suppose so, said Erebus. She was beginning to wonder what exactly she would do when she got there, and was feeling a little lonely. Of course, course, said Bree hastily. But there's no need to rush things, if you know what I mean. No, I don't know what you mean, said Win. Why don't you want to go? Boo-hoo, muttered Bree. Well, don't you see, ma'am? It's an important occasion, returning to one's country, entering society, the best society. It is so essential to make a good impression, not perhaps looking quite ourselves yet. Wen broke out into a hoarse laugh. It's your tail, Bree. I see it all now. You want to wait till your tail grows, it's grown again, and we don't even know if tails are worn long in Narnia. Really, Bree, you're as vain as that Tarkinian in Tashbaan. You are silly, Bree, said Erebus, by the lion's mane. Tarkina, I'm nothing of the sort, said Bree, indignantly. I have a proper respect for myself and my fellow horses, that's all. Bree, said Erebus, who was not very interested in the cut of his tail, I've been wanting to ask you something for a long time. Why do you keep on swearing by the lion and by the lion's mane? I thought you hated lions. So do I, answered Bree. But when I speak of the lion, of course I mean Aslan, the great deliverer of Narnia, who drove away the witch and the winter. All Narnians swear by him. But he's a lion. No, of course not, said Bree, in a rather shocked voice. All the stories about him in Tashbaan say he is, replied Erebus. And if he isn't a lion, why do you call him a lion? Well, you hardly understand that your age, said Bree, and I was only a little foul when I left, so I don't quite fully understand it myself. Bree was standing with his back on the green wall while he said this, and the other two were facing him. He was talking in a rather superior tone, with his eyes half shut. That was why he didn't see that change expression in the faces of Win and Erebus. They had good reasons to have open mouths and staring eyes, because while Bree spoke, they saw an enormous lion leap up from the outside and balance itself on the top of the green wall. Only it was a brighter yellow, and it was bigger and more beautiful and more alarming than any lion they had ever seen. And at once it jumped down inside the wall and began approaching Bree from behind. It made no noise at all, and Win and Erebus couldn't make any noise themselves, no more than if they were frozen. No doubt, continued Bree, when they speak of him as a lion, they only mean he's as strong as a lion, or, to our enemies of course, as fierce as a lion, or something of that kind. Even a little girl like you, Erebus, must see that it would be quite absurd to suppose he is a real lion. Indeed, it would be disrespectful if he was a lion. He'd have to be a beast, just like the rest of us. Why? And here Bree began to laugh. If he was a lion, he'd have 4 paws and a tail and whiskers. Hey, help. For just as he said the word whiskers, one of Aslan's had actually tickled his ear. Bree shot away like an arrow to the other side of the enclosure, and there turned. The wall was too high for him to jump, and he could fly no further. Erebus and Win both started back. There was about a second of intense silence. Then Win, though shaking all over, gave a strange little neigh and trotted across to the lion. Please, she said, you're so beautiful. You may eat me if you like. I'd sooner be eaten by you than fed by anyone else. Dearest daughter, said Aslan, planting a lion's kiss on her twitching velvet nose, I knew you would not be long in coming to me. Joy shall be yours. Then he lifted his head and spoke in a louder voice. Now, Bree, he said, you poor, proud, frightened horse, draw near still, my son. Do not dare, not to dare, touch me, smell me. Here are my paws, here's my tail, these are my whiskers. I am a true beast. Aslan, said Bree in a shaken voice, I'm afraid I must be rather full. Happy the horse who knows that while he is still young, or the human either. Draw near, Erebus, my daughter. See, my paws are velveted. You will not be torn this time. This time, sir, said Erebus. It was I who wounded you, said Aslan. I am the only lion you met in all your journeyings. Do you know why I tore you? No, sir. The scratches on your back, tear for tear, throb for throb, blood for blood, were equal to the stripes laid on the back of your stepmother's slave because of the drugged sleep you cast upon her. You needed to know what it felt like. Yes, sir, please. Ask on, my dear, said Aslan. Will any more harm come to her by what I did? Child, said the lion, I'm telling you your story, not hers. No one is told any story but their own. Then he shook his head and spoke in a lighter voice. Be merry, little ones, he said. We shall meet again soon, but before that you will have another visitor. Then in one bound he reached to the top of the wall and vanished from their sight. Strange to say, they felt no inclination to talk to one another about him after he had gone. They all moved slowly away to different parts of the quiet grass, and there paced to and fro, each alone thinking. About half an hour later, the two horses were summoned to the back of the house to eat something nice that the hermit had got ready for them. And Erebus, still walking and thinking, was startled by the harsh sound of the trumpet outside the gate. Who is there? Asked Erebus. His Royal Highness, Prince Cor of Arkenland, said a voice from outside. Erebus undid the door and opened it, drawing back a little way to let the strangers in. Two soldiers with halberds came first and took their stand at each side of the entry. Then followed a herald and the trumpeter. His Royal Highness, Prince Cor of Arkenland, desires an audience of the Lady Erebus, said the herald. Then he and the trumpeter drew us aside and bowed, and the soldiers saluted. The prince himself came in. All his attendants withdrew and closed the gate behind them. The prince bowed, and a very clumsy bow for a prince it was. Erebus curtsied in a collar-mean style, which is not at all like ours, and did it very well because, of course, she had been taught how. Then she looked up and saw what sort of a person this prince was. She saw a mere boy. He was bareheaded, and his fair hair was encircled with a very thin band of gold, hardly thicker than a wire. His upper tunic was of white cambric, as fine as a handkerchief, so that the bright red tunic beneath it showed through. His left hand, which rested on his enameled sword hilt, was bandaged. Erebus looked twice at his face before she gasped and said, "Why, it's Chasta, all father said. Your father? Said Erebus. Apparently King Loon is my father, said Shasta. I might really have guessed it. Corn being so like me. We were twins, you see. Oh, and my name isn't Shasta. It's Cor. Cor is a nicer name than Shasta, said Erebus. Brothers' names run like in Arkenland, said Shasta, or Prince Cor, as we must now call him, like Dar and Darren, Cole and Colin, and so on. Shasta, I mean Cor, said Erebus. No, shut up. There's something I've got to say at once. I'm sorry, I've been such a pig. But I did change before I knew you were a prince. Honestly, I did. When you went back and faced the lion, I wasn't really going to kill you at all. That lion said, Cor. I know, said Erebus, nodding. Both were still and solemn for a moment, as each saw that the other knew about Aslan. Suddenly, Erebus remembered Cor's bandaged hand. I say, she cried, I forgot. You've been in a battle. Is that a wound? A mere scratch, said Cor, using for the first time a rather lordly tone. But a moment later, he burst out laughing and said, if you want to know the truth, it isn't a proper wound at all. I only took the skin off my knuckles, just as any clumsy fool might do without going near a battle. Still, you were in the battle, said Erebus. It must have been wonderful. It wasn't at all what I thought, said Cor. But Cor, you haven't told me anything yet about King Loon and how he found out who you were. Well, let's sit down, said Cor, for it's rather a long story. And by the way, Father's an absolute brick. I'd been just as pleased, or very nearly, at finding he was my father, even if he weren't a king, even though education and all sorts of horrible things are going to happen to me. But you want the story. Well, Corin and I are twins, and about a week after we were both born, apparently they took us to a wise old centaur in Narnia to be blessed or something. Now this centaur was a prophet, as a good many centaurs are. Perhaps you haven't seen any centaurs yet. They were some in the battle yesterday. Most remarkable people, but I can't say I feel quite at home with them yet. I say, Erebus, there are going to be a lot of things to get used to in these northern countries. Yes, there are, said Erebus, but get on with the story. Well, as soon as he saw Corn and me, it seems the centaur looked at me and said, a day will come when that boy will save Arkenland from the deadliest danger in whichever she lay. So of course my father and mother were very pleased, but there was someone present who wasn't. This was a chap called the Lord Barr, who had been father's Lord Chancellor, and apparently he'd done something wrong. Beesling or some word like that. I didn't understand that part very well, and father had to dismiss him, but nothing else was done to him, and he was allowed to go on living in Arkenland. But he must have been as bad as he could be, for it came out afterwards he had been in the pay of the Tisrock and had sent a lot of secret information to Tashban. So as soon as he heard I was going to save Arkenland from a great danger, he decided I must be put out of the way. Well, he succeeded in kidnapping me. I don't exactly know how, and rode away down the winding arrow of the coast. He'd had everything prepared, and there was a ship manned with his own followers lying ready for him. And he put out to the sea with me on board. But Father got wind of it, though not quite in time, and was after him as quickly as he could. The Lord bar was already at sea when Father reached the coast, but not out of sight, and Father was embarked in one of his own warships within 20 minutes. It must have been a wonderful chase. They were 6 days following Bar's galleon and brought her to battle on the 7th. It was a great sea fight. I heard a lot about it yesterday evening. From 10 o'clock in the morning till sunset, our people took the ship in the end, but it wasn't there. The Lord Bar himself had been killed in the battle, but one of his men said that early that morning, as soon as he saw he was certain to be overhauled, Bar had given me to one of his knights and sent us both away in a ship's boat, and that boat was never seen again. But of course, that was the same boat that Aslan, he seems to be at the back of all the stories, pushed ashore at the right place for Arshish to pick me up. I wish I knew that knight's name, for he must have kept me alive and starved himself to do it. I suppose Aslan would say that that was part of someone else's story, said Erebus. I was forgetting that, said Cor. And I wonder how the prophecy will work out, said Erebus, and what the great danger is that you're to save Arkenland. Well, said Cor, rather awkwardly, they seem to think I've done it already. Erebus clapped her hands. Why, of course, she said. How stupid am I? And how wonderful. Arkenland can never be in much greater danger than it was when Rabadash had crossed the Arrow with his 200 horses, and you hadn't yet got through with your message. Don't you feel proud? I think I feel a bit scared, said Cor. And you'll be living at Anwar now, said Erebus rather wistfully. Oh, said Cor, I'd nearly forgotten what I came about. Father wants you to come and to live with us. He says that there's been no lady in the court. They call it the court. I don't know why. Since Mother died, to Erebus. You'll like Father and Corin. They're not like me. They've been properly brought up. You needn't be afraid of them. Oh, stop it, said Erebus. Or we'll have a real fight. Of course, I'll come. Now let's go and see the horses, said Cor. There was a great and joyous meeting between Bree and Cor, and Bree, who was still a rather subdued frame of mind, agreed to set out for Anward at once. He and Wynn would cross into Narnia on the following day. All forbade an affectionate farewell to the hermit and promised that they would visit him again soon. But about the middle of the morning, they were on their way. The horses had expected that Erebus and Cor would ride, but Cor explained that except in war, where everyone must do what he can do best, no one in Narnia or Arkenland ever dreamed of mounting a talking horse. This reminded poor Bree again of how little he knew about Narnian customs and what dreadful mistakes he might make. So while Wynn strolled along in a happy dream, Bree got more nervous and more self-conscious with every step he took. Buck up, Bree, said Cor. It's far worse for me than for you. You aren't going to be educated. I shall be learning reading and writing and heraldry, in dancing and history and music, while you'll be galloping and rolling on the hills of Narnia to your heart's content. But that's just the point, groaned Bree. Do talking horses roll? Supposing they don't, I can't bear to give it up. What do you think, Wynn? I'm going to roll anyway, said Wynn. I don't suppose next bed, said the prince. Well, said Bree, I'm going to have a good one now. It may be the last. Wait for me a minute. I was 5 minutes before he rose again, blowing hard and covered with bits of bracken. Now I'm ready, he said, in a voice of profound gloom. Lead on, Prince Cor, Narnia and the North. But he looked more like a horse going to a funeral than a long-lost captive returning to home and freedom. And that's the end of chapter 14. Now for the last chapter, 15, Rapidash the Ridiculous. The next turn. The next turn on the road brought them out from among the trees, and there, across green lawns, sheltered from the north wind by the high wooded ridge at his back, they saw the castle in Anvard. It was very old and built of warm reddish-brown stone. Before they had reached the gate, King Loon came out to meet them, not looking at all like Erebus in the idea of a king and wearing the oldest of old clothes, for he had just come from making a round of the kennels with his huntsman and had only stopped for a moment to wash his doggy hands. But the bow with which he greeted Erebus as he took her hand would have been stately enough for an emperor. Little lady, he said, we bid you very heartily welcome. If my dear wife were still alive, we could make you better cheer, but could not do it with a better will. And I am sorry that you have had misfortunes and been driven from your father's house, which cannot but be a grief to you. My son Cor has told me about your adventures together and all your valor. It was he who did all that, sir, said Erebus. Why, he rushed at a lion to save me. What's that? Said King Loon, his face brightening. I haven't heard that part of the story. Then Erebus told it, and Cor, who had very much wanted the story to be known, though he felt he couldn't tell it himself, didn't enjoy it so much as he had expected, and indeed felt rather foolish. But his father enjoyed it very much indeed, and in the course of the next few weeks told it to so many people that Cor wished it had never happened. Then the king turned to Win and Bree and was just as polite to them as to Erebus, and asked them a lot of questions about their families and where they had lived in Narnia before they had been captured. The horses were rather tongue-tied, for they weren't yet used to being talked to as equals by humans, grown-up humans, that is. They didn't mind Erebus and Cor. Presently, Queen Lucy came out of the castle and joined them, and King Loon said to Erebus, my dear, here's a loving friend of our house, and she has been seeing that your apartments are put to rights for your better than I could have done it. You'd like to come and see them, wouldn't you? Said Lucy, kissing Erebus. They liked each other at once and soon went away together to talk about Erebus' bedroom and Erebus' boudoir, and about getting clothes for her and all the sort of things girls do and talk on such an occasion. After lunch, which they had on the terrace, it was cold birds and game pie and wine and bread and cheese. King Loon ruffled up his brow and heaved a sigh and said, Hee-ho, we have the same side as the king. Your majesty would have perfect right to strike off his head, said Paradin. Such an assault as he made puts him on a level with assassins. It is very true, said Edmund, but even a traitor may mend. I have known one that did. And he looked very thoughtful. To kill this Rabadash would go near to raising war with the Tisroc, said Darren. A fig for the Tisroc, said King Loon. His strength is in numbers, and numbers will never cross the desert. But I have no stomach for killing men, even traitors in cold blood. To have cut his throat in battle would have eased my heart mightily, but this is a different thing. By my counsel, said Lucy, your majesty shall give him another trial. Let him go free on straight promise of fair dealing in the future. It may be that he will keep this word. Maybe apes will grow honest, sister, said Edmund, but by the lion, if he breaks it again, may it be in such time and place that any of us could swap his head in clean battle. It shall be tried, said the king, and then to one of the attendants sent for the prisoner friend. Rabadash was brought before them in chains to look at him. Anyone would have supposed that he had passed the night in a noisome dungeon without food or water, but in reality he had been shut up in quite a comfortable room and provided with an excellent supper. But as he was sulking far too furiously to touch the supper and had spent the whole night stamping and roaring and cursing, he naturally did not now look his best. Your Royal Highness needs to be told, said King Loon, that by the law of nations as well as by all reasons of prudent policy, we have as good right to your head as ever one mortal man had against another. Nevertheless, in consideration of your youth and the ill nurture, devoid of all gentles and courtesy, which you have doubtless had in the land of slaves and tyrants, we are disposed to set you free, unharmed, on these conditions. First, that curse you for a barbarian dog, spluttered Rabadash. Do you think I will ever even hear you? Your conditions, Fa. You talk very largely of nurture, and I know not what. It's easy to a man in chains, huh? Take off these vile bonds, give me a sword, and let any of you who dares then debate with me. Nearly all the lords sprang to their feet, and Corin shouted, Father, can I box him, please? Peace, your majesties, my lords, said King Loon. Have we no more gravity among us than to be so shaved by the taunt of a bajock? Sit down, Corin, or shalt leave the table. I ask your highness again to hear our conditions. I hear no conditions from barbarians and sorcerers, said Rabadash. Not one of you dare touch a hair on my head. Every insult you have heaped on me shall be paid with oceans of Narnian and Arganlandish blood. Terrible shall the vengeance of the Tisroc be, even now, but kill me, and the burning and torturing in these northern lands shall become a tale of frighten the world 1,000 years hence. Beware, beware, beware. The bolt of Tash falls from above. Does it ever get caught on a hook halfway? Asked Corin. Shame, Corin, said the king. Never taunt a man, save when he is stronger than you. Then, as you please. Oh, you foolish Rapidash, sighed Lucy. Next moment, Cora wondered why everyone at the table had risen and was standing perfectly still. Of course, he did the same himself, and then he saw the reason. Aslan was among them, though no one had seen him coming. Rapidash started as the immense shape of a lion paced softly in between him and his accusers. Rapidash, said Aslan, take heed. Your doom is very near, but you may still avoid it. Forget your pride. What have you to be proud of? And your anger. Who has done you wrong? And accept the mercy of these good kings. Then Rapidash rolled his eyes and spread his mouth into a horrible, long, mirthless grin, like a shark, and wagged his ears up and down. Anyone can learn how to do this if they take the trouble. He had always found this very effective in colormen. The bravest had trembled when he made these faces, and ordinary people had fallen to the floor, and sensitive people had often fainted. But what Rapidash didn't realize is that it is very easy to frighten people who know you can have them boiled alive the moment you give the word. The grimace thing didn't look at all alarming in Arkenland. Indeed, Lucy only thought Rapidash was going to be sick. Demon, 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 shrieked the prince. I know you. You are the foul fiend of Narnia. You are the enemy of the gods. Learn who I am, horrible phantasm. I am descended from Tash, the inexorable, the irresistible. The curse of Tash is upon you. Lightning in the shape of a scorpion shall be rained on you. The mountains of Narnia shall be grown into dust. Have a care, Rapidash, said Aslan quietly. The doom is near now. It is at the door. It has lifted the latch. Let the skies fall, shrieked Rapidash. Let the earth gape. Let the blood and fire obliterate the world. But be sure, I will never desist till I have dragged to my palace by her hair the barbarian queen, the daughter of dogs. The hour has struck, said Aslan, and Rapidash saw, to his supreme horror, that everyone had begun to laugh. They couldn't help it. Rapidash had been wagging his ears all the time. As soon as Aslan said, the hour has struck, the ears began to change. They grew longer and more pointed, and soon were covered with gray hair. And while everyone was wondering where they had seen ears like that before, Rapidash's face began to change too. It grew longer and thicker, and the top and larger eyed, and the nose sank back into the face, or else the face swelled up and became all nose, and there was hair all over it. And his arms grew longer and came down in front of him. All his hands were resting on the ground, only they weren't hands, now they were hooves. He was standing on all fours, and his clothes disappeared, and everyone laughed louder and louder because they couldn't help it, for now what had been Rapidash was simply and unmistakably a donkey. The terrible thing was that his human speech lasted just a moment longer than his human shape, so that when he realized the change that was coming over him, he screamed out, "Oh, not a donkey! Mercy! If it weren't even a horse! Nah, or and And so the words died away into a donkey's bray. Now hear me, Rabadash, said Aslan. Justice shall be mixed with mercy. You shall not always be an ass. At this course, the donkey twitched his ears forward, and that also was so funny that everyone laughed all the more. They tried not to, but they tried in vain. You have appealed to Tash, said Aslan, and in the temple of Tash you shall be healed. You must stand before the altar of Tash in Tashbaan at the great autumn feast this year, and there, in the sight of Tashbaan, your ass's shape will fall from you, and all men will know you for Prince Rabadash. But as long as you live, you ever go more than 10 miles away from the great temple of Tashbaan, you shall instantly become again as you are now. And from the second change, there'll be no return. There was a short silence, and then they all stirred and looked at one another as if they were waking from sleep. Aslan was gone, but there was the brightness in the air and on the good grass, and a joy in their hearts which assured them that he had been no dream. And anyway, there was the donkey in front of them. King Loon was the kindest hearted of men, and on seeing his enemy in this regrettable condition, he forgot all his anger. Your Royal Highness, he said, I'm most truly sorry that things have come to this extremity. Your Highness will bear witness that it was done of our doing, and of course we shall be delighted to provide your Highness with a shipping back to Tashbaan for the treatment which Aslan has prescribed. You shall have every comfort which your Highness' situation allows. The best of the cattle boats, the freshest carrots and thistles, but a defending bray from the donkey and a well-aimed kick at one of the guards made it clear that these kindly offers were ungratefully received. And here, to get him out of the way, I better finish off the story of Rabadash. He, or it, was duly sent back by boat to Tashbaan and brought into the temple of Tash at the great autumn festival, and then he became a man again. But of course, 4,000 or 5,000 people had seen the transformation, and the affair could not possibly be hushed up. And after the old Tisroc's death, when Rabadash became Tisroc, in his place he turned out the most peaceful Tisroc colorman had ever known. This was because, not daring to go more than 10 miles from Tashbaan, he would never go on a war himself, and he didn't want the Tarkans to win fame in the wars at his expense, for that is the way Tisrocs get overthrown. But though his reasons were selfish, it made things much more comfortable for all smaller countries round Colorman. His own people never forgot that he had been a donkey during his reign, and to his face he was called Rabadash the Peacemaker. But after his death, and being behind his back, he was called Rabadash the Ridiculous. And if you look him in a good history colorman, try the local library, you will find him under that name. And to this day, in colorman schools, if you do anything unusually stupid, you are likely to be called a second Rabadash. Meanwhile, in Anvert, everyone was very glad that he had been disposed of before the real fun began, which was a grand feast held that evening on the lawn before the castle, with dozens of lanterns to help the moonlight, and the wine flowed, and the tales were told, and jokes were cracked, and then silence was made, poet with 2 fiddlers stepped out into the middle of the circle. Erebus and Cor prepared themselves to be bored, for the only poetry they knew was colorine kind, and you know what that was like. But at the very first scrape of the fiddles, a rocket seemed to go up inside their heads, and his poet sang the great old lay of fair Olven, and how he forgot the giant peer and turned him into stone, and that is the origin of Mount Peer. It was a 2-headed giant, and won the lady Lil for his bride, and when it was over, they wished it was going to begin again. And though Bree couldn't sing, he told the story of the fight, and at Solindre, and Lucy told again. They had all expected, except Erebus and Cor, heard it many times, but they all wanted it again. The tale of the wardrobe, and how she and King Edmund and Queen Susan and Peter, the High King, had first come into Narnia. And presently, as was certain to happen sooner or later, King Loon said it was time for young people to be in bed, and tomorrow, Cor, he added, shall come over all the castle with me, and see this state, and mark all its strength and weaknesses, for it will be thine to guard when I am gone. But Corin will be the king then, father, said Cor. Nay, lad, said King Loon, thou art my heir, the crown comes to thee. But I don't want it, said Cor. I'd far rather. 'Tis no question what thou wantest, Cor, nor I either. 'Tis the course of law. But if we're twins, we must be the same age. Nay, said the king with a laugh. One must come first. Art Corin's elder by full 20 minutes, and his better too. Let's hope, though that's no great mastery. And he looked at Corin with a twinkle in his eye. But father, couldn't you make whichever you like to be the next king? No, the king's under the law, for it's the law makes him a king, has no more power to start away from thy ground than any sentry from its post. Oh dear, said Cor, I don't want to at all. And Corin, I am most dreadfully sorry. I never dreamed my turning up was going to chisel you out of your kingdom. Hurry, said Corin. I shan't have to be king. I shan't have to be king. I'll always be a prince. It's prince have all the fun. And that's truer than thy brother knows, Cor, said King Loon, for this is what it means to be a king. To be first in every desperate attack and last in every desperate retreat, and when there's hunger in the land, as you must be now, and then in bad years, to wear finer clothes and laugh louder over a scantier meal than any man in your land. When the 2 boys were going upstairs to bed, Cor again asked Corin if nothing could be done about it, and Corin said, if you say another word about it, I'll knock you down. It would be nice to end the story by saying that after that the 2 brothers never disagreed about anything again, but I'm afraid it would not be true. In reality, they quarreled and fought just about as often as any other 2 boys would, and all their fights ended, if they didn't begin, with Cor getting knocked down. For though when they had both grown up and become swordsmen, Cor was the most dangerous man in battle. Neither he nor anyone else in the north countries could ever equal Corin as as a boxer. That was how he got his name of Corin Thunderfist, and how he performed his great exploit against the lapsed bear of Stormness, which was really a talking bear but had gone back to wild bear habits. Corin climbed up to its lair of Narnia's side of Stormness one winter. When the snow was the hills, and boxed it without a timekeeper for 33 rounds, and at the end it couldn't see out of its eyes and became a reformed character. Erebus also had many quarrels, and I'm afraid even fights with Cor, but they always made up again. So that years later, when they were grown up, they were so used to quarreling and making up again that they got married, so as to go on doing it more conveniently. And after King Loon's death, they made a good king and queen of Arkenland, and Ram the Great, and the most famous of all kings of Arkenland, was their son. Bree and Wyn lived happily to the great age of Narnia, and both got married, but not to one another. And they were many months in which one or both of them didn't come trotting over the pass to visit their friends at Anvard. The end. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I did. I really did. At first it was a little, but I really did enjoy it. So the next book, it's going to be this, right, let me see, The Horse and His Boy, and it would be The Magician's Nephew. We're going to be going to The Magician's Nephew. That's book 5. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please guys, do not forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, hit the bell for notifications,